Hello everybody and welcome back to the United Stand. I'm here with an exclusive interview with Mark Ogden from the ESPN. Mark, lots happened this weekend. Great to get you on and have this talk.
Yeah, it's been busy, hasn't it? International weekend's usually quiet, but no, it's been busy for Man United this weekend.
Exactly. What a weekend to kind of break this sort of news about Sir Jim leading the race to basically get a minority share into Manchester United. It's very different from the first proposal he put forward. But the first we heard of this was Sheikh Jassim exiting himself from the race, probably kind of had word that this wasn't going to move forward. Fabrizio Romano's come out and said that Sheikh Jassim believes that the Glazers probably never wanted to do a full sale. I mean, what's your understanding surrounding that?
Yeah, well, right from the outset, I mean, going back to maybe January time, I was told that certainly Joel and Avram wanted to stick around at the club, and I was kind of surprised at the time because I think we all know that the Glazers are only in this for the money. They're not in it for the sporting, glory, because there's not been any sporting glory for a while. So I was a bit surprised at that because I just felt that they would want to, cash in the chips and move on. But no, it's been consistently right from the outset that those two wanted to stick around. The other four, Brian, Kevin, Edward and Darcy, want to, cash in the chips, I guess, and move on. But so with that being the case, it would have taken a massive bid from either Sir Jim Ratcliffe or Qatar to persuade the Glazers to sell up completely, because I think they want to retain the stake in the sense that they feel that in the years to come, certainly maybe 3 or 4 years down the line, that the club could be worth maybe £10 billion. I think that's a bit unrealistic, but they feel that, with potential streaming revenue coming through, bigger broadcast deals, maybe more sponsorship deals, that they think that getting rid of it now is the wrong time to do it. I mean, listen, I'm a football reporter, I'm not a business reporter, and a lot of people on the business side say that's the way they're looking at it. It's a long-term investment, not a short-term thing. But as it stands, they're not going anywhere. So Jim Ratcliffe is going to buy a minority stake. But the good news for the fans, and I think they have to stress it is good news for the fans, this is the beginning of the end of the Glazers in terms of their control of the club and their grip, really. If a guy comes in with 25%, it's not obviously a majority stake, but if he gets control of the sporting side of the club, as we think he is going to have, then that shows you the Glazers aren't interested in the sporting side of it. They're just interested in the financial side of it. So the good news is it's the start of the end of the Glazers. The bad news is they're still hanging around. And I know a lot of the fans will be unhappy and a lot of the fans will be, maybe protesting the game against Copenhagen next week. But it is the beginning of the end. And I think if you rewind the clock a year ago to before the announcement that the club was going to be looking at strategic alternatives, if you'd been told a year ago that Sir Jim Ratcliffe was going to come in and buy 25% of the club off the Glazers, I think the fans would have taken that because of the Qatari involvement, the potential of being owned by a massively rich, Middle Eastern state or somebody from that Middle Eastern state. That was the appeal, that they would have rebuilt the stadium, rebuilt the team. Maybe that was too good to be true. I don't know. I mean, we don't know the mechanics of the detail. One thing that I was suspicious about with Qatar throughout is that, Sheikh Jassim has never actually spoken publicly. We've only ever been given 2 stock photographs of him.
I know, we were struggling for our thumbnails.
If he really wanted the club, I would have thought they would have made more of a kind of a campaign to, win hearts and minds and just push it from a PR point of view, and it hasn't really happened like that. So who knows? But it is what it is, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe looks like he's going to take a stake in the club at some point this week. And I think the good thing is that he has some sporting expertise. Ineos have a successful cycling team. Nice in France are beginning to, decent. I think the second now in Ligue 1, and we all know that he's very close to Sir Dave Brailsford, who's involved with the GB cycling team that was regarded as being ahead of everybody at the time when they won all those gold medals. So that is a good thing, the expertise that he might bring in. The financial side of it is worth, I think we just checked, he was worth £30 billion personally this year on the Sunday Times Rich List. So he's got a lot of revenue behind it. But I think the key thing is it's the expertise. We've seen over the years that United have spent a lot of money in the last 10 years, just wasted it, a lack of expertise. I think with Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in, I think he will have that knowledge, and the people around him have the knowledge, the sporting knowledge, to make United better and just strengthen the club off the pitch, which is what it needs as much as on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important, despite whatever owner comes in, that things change on the footballing side. I know a lot of fans, including myself, to be honest, were deflated when they heard the news, maybe still are deflated, because with Sheikh Jassim, you could see the amount of money he was going to invest, clear the debt, inject into the stadium. It's that sort of ownership that can compete with the likes of Manchester City moving forward, where there is question marks whether Sir Jim can do that, especially initially with only 25%. I mean, he's buying 25% for £1.4 billion, which is an overvalue of the club. Is that so he can have control over the sporting side? He's paid that bit extra?
Well, you would think so, because if you look at 25% at 1.5 billion around about, that values the club at £6 billion, which is roughly what the Glazers value it at. But on the New York Stock Exchange, the club is actually worth less than £3 billion. So, It is worth more than 3 billion. The 3 billion valuation is the paper value of the shares. I think with United, because it's the novelty value. It's like buying Real Madrid or Barcelona. These clubs and these brands don't come available very often, so you're paying that additional factor for the rarity value of it. But Sheikh Jassim wouldn't go as high as £6 billion, and I don't think Sir Jim Ratcliffe has.
And he's a multi-billionaire as well, so he could have if he wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. The money would have been there. You can always say that people with money want to make sure they get value for money as well. But I guess if Man United is a prized asset. Now, it's a football club, but take it away from the supporter attachment. It's a brand as well, and people outside of this club with money see the attraction of the brand. The ability to have a foot in the door in the Far East and the USA, and Man United opens doors, just like Liverpool does, and Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich. So that's what you're paying for. So, if you're a Qatari sheikh with lots of money, I would have thought that you would have gone for it. So, like I say, maybe that bid was too good to be true, because the lack of detail that came out of it was a surprise to me. There's not been a massive lot of detail from Sir Jim Ratcliffe, but we'll hopefully get that this week. And, £1.45 billion for 25% of the club. We don't know yet if that means that the debt's going to go. Is the debt still going to be there? Are they going to lend the money to cover the debt? Because if United end up clearing that, if the Glazers take this money, this is a kind of a fairy tale notion. If the Glazers get £1.5 billion for 25%, and then £700 million of that is going to clear off the debt, great. I don't think that'll be the case, but maybe it is. I don't think it will be, but that's what it should be. But we'll wait and see.
I very highly doubt that would be the case. It would seem like the logical thing to do, but if I know the Glazers, which I feel like I do after supporting this club all of my life, I don't think that would be the case. But that'd start something. I mean, we're going to talk about loads of different things here surrounding kind of this bid and what it means for Manchester United going forward. MR2211 says, is there a certain amount of debt we could hit to make the FA/UEFA step in and force action? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
And no. I don't think there is going to be with... So, Jim, from what I remember, if I remember the initial pledge he put forward, and I might be getting this wrong, so if I am, correct me, I'm pretty sure his plan was to take the debt, if he got full control of Manchester United, and put it onto Ineos instead of it being onto Manchester United.
Yeah, but I don't see that happening either, because why would his personal company, or why would a company that has no attachment to Man United take on the debt? So these are all questions that we're waiting to get answers to, and as we've known over the years, the Glazers, they don't answer many questions, so we might not get the answers. I think there might be an obligation to answer some certain questions for the city and the stock exchange, but United are still carrying lots of debt, and I just think that 1.5 billion that's going to go to the Glazers will stay with the Glazers. I don't think there's anything going to be spent on the club from that, but I think what Sir Jim Ratcliffe has is the ability to go to the banks to get money in advance for ground improvements or for team improvements, and then that debt may go on to Ineos. It may go to the club. We'll wait and see. The
question marks has to be as well is, are any of the Glazer siblings bowing out? Because we know Joel and Avram wanted to stay in. The others, it was kind of made clear that they wanted to maybe take the money and leave it. What is going to happen with that side of things?
Well, the other four, we don't really see much of them anyway. Well, we don't see any of them, to be honest, but they have no involvement. Brian used to be kind of involved. He'd turn up at games, but he's disappeared off the scene for a long time now. So I don't think I'd imagine they would take a small stake, just to kind of a nominal stake, just to have their interest. But I don't think it's going to be a case whereby they have a significant stake and a significant say in what happens. They'll want to, like I said, take the money and run, I guess, and leave Joel and Avram to do what they want to do with it. But I just think it's a messy way to do it, but it's the start of something. It's the foot in the door to moving them out. And I think the part of the deal, the part of the agreement would be that at certain points in time, there will be more shares being made available, and eventually the Glazers will clear off. But when that is, we don't know.
It's a long process, and I'd be very interested, obviously, when this meeting does happen. I think it's on Thursday, to see what the plan of action is going forward. Because I started thinking to myself, too many cooks as well. I mean, so many people wanting to make probably different decisions. Who's going to have Class A shares, Class B shares? All of this comes into perspective, and hopefully we'll find out about that a little bit more. Victor Masaka says, no, Sir Jim doesn't have the liquid cash. And Tony says, the plan was to leave the current debt on the club and any new debt would be put onto Ineos. Okay, so...
Well, we don't know that. I mean, I don't know who these people are sending in, but we don't know that. Nobody knows that until we've actually seen the documents. This is the problem with these takeovers, that they're really difficult stories to cover, because it's done at a level, it's way beyond football. This is done in banks, it's done in investment groups, it's done within the city.
We all need a business lecture, don't we?
We do. In the last You know, the last 12 months have been all sorts of stories that have been doing the rounds that, you know, that the Qataris going to buy the club in Hull, they're going to buy it this month, that the Glazers were taking it off the market. All these stories have come out from reputable journalists that haven't been true. Now, is that because there's been misinformation by both camps or by the Glazer camp? That happens. So I would take it all with a pinch of salt. You know, reports saying that Ratcliffe's going to do this or going to do that with the debt. We don't know until the first people that will know will be the investors, because they're the people with the money in the club. So we're going to have to wait and see, unfortunately, for the actual stuff in black and white on a piece of paper that said this is what's going to happen.
The one thing that would be very interesting is what's going to happen with the renovation of Old Trafford and of the stadium, because obviously that is set to be renovated / talks of a completely new stadium being built. I mean, we heard the excuse as to why it wasn't being used in Euro 2028 because they couldn't put a definite date on when the stadium would be finished its renovations, if it would be still ongoing renovations then. I mean, the money that Sir Jim is putting in, I wonder if that will be maybe used towards the stadium. But again, we know a new stadium is going to cost £1 billion to kind of do. Are they going to go and get other investments with the bank? What do you think the plan would be moving forward with that?
I think with the stadium, I think that would be come from outside funding. That would be. I think the fans will have to kind of accept the idea that at some point at the other end of this, that Old Trafford will have naming rights deals that will help pay for the rebuild of the ground. I think, you know, 20 years ago, I think most United fans wouldn't have dreamt of the ground being renamed, but now everybody does it, and they're at a competitive disadvantage now by not having a sponsor's name attached to it. You know, Bayern Munich, the Allianz Arena, Barcelona, the Spotify Nou Camp, Real Madrid are going to have a deal with the Bernabeu, City and the Etihad, the Emirates. You know, Tottenham will get a deal for theirs at some point, and we're talking £40–50 million a year. Now that is money that United can't afford to miss out on. So when it comes to rebuilding a stadium, I was told that when the Chelsea deal was being talked about, and 3 or 4 different investment groups were looking to buy Chelsea, that people were talking about the need to rebuild Stamford Bridge as a negative, but I was told the reality is that investors see that as a positive, that it's an opportunity to turn a stadium into a multi-purpose venue. So Old Trafford, you know, if it's done properly, could be turned into a 365, 24-day-a-year stadium with a roof on it, with a massive scoreboard. You could have concerts, you could have NFL games. This sort of thing generates loads of money. Boxing fights. You know, nothing ever happens at Old Trafford.
Nothing.
You look at the Etihad, they've got concerts on, they've got an arena being built next door to it. Old Trafford is missing out on all that revenue. Now, it might not be big revenue, but it all mounts up, and it turns it into... The idea is that you create a venue that becomes a destination of choice for all these events. So that's why it's an appealing idea for investment groups to put money into the building of an arena or a stadium. So I don't think Sir Jim Ratcliffe would have to find the money to rebuild Old Trafford. What I have been told is that certainly Glazers enlisted, you know, did a research group to look at the potential of rebuilding the stadium, and there were 2 options put on the table. Option 1 was to rebuild it completely, i.e., you know, do what Tottenham did, just basically put it on the footprint of Old Trafford, brand new stadium on the footprint. That would have been maybe £1.5 billion. Plan B was to rebuild Old Trafford in its current form and just do a stand at a time. And you're looking at £1 billion for that, there or thereabouts. I mean, this is a year ago, so the prices might have gone up now. Now, that would have taken 5 years, because you're taking 5 years to do each stand in each area. By the time it's done, it's probably outdated. So Plan B wasn't a great option. You know, Plan A is the most expensive one, but long term, it's probably the one that will guarantee you a stadium for 100 years. And, you know, United fans who've been to Tottenham will think, well, an amazing stadium. Great stadium inside the stadium, but it's also away from the pitch and inside the stadium, because we all know that you go to Old Trafford and you're having to leave your seat 5 minutes before half time to get a pie, and it's going to burn your mouth. Or you go to the toilet and there are either the massive queues or there's floods, and then you're missing the start of the second half because you're still in the queue, and it's horrendous. So the queues are ridiculous, the ceilings are so low. You go to Tottenham, you go to Anfield, you go to City, and it's all modern, it's all big airy spaces. That's what United need.
I mean,
everything.
I struggle to fit in the seats, and I'm 5'2",
well,
so I don't know how anybody else fits in there.
Well, that's the thing, the whole stadium itself is crying out for modernisation, so that's why people see it as an opportunity. There's so many ways that companies and sponsorship groups can monetise a stadium now. They've not even got a scoreboard now. You can imagine if they had this, you look at the Dallas Cowboys stadium with the biggest television scoreboard in the world. You could have something like that at Old Trafford, it'd be sponsored. Everything comes with a sponsor. And then that's where the money comes in. So the building of a stadium wouldn't be an issue. There'd be so many banks or investment groups trying to fund that stadium. The issue is the team. And that has to come first, because if the team's successful and gets better, then the money from outside starts coming in. You can't stop it coming in, as United
especially
found out
for
back
Man
in the old days.
United, because we've been poor for quite a while now, and we still get the record sponsorship deals coming in.
Absolutely.
And so when Man United are doing well, it's just going to increase and increase and increase.
Well, yeah, people want to be associated with winners, don't they? So United will always attract attention because they're Man United, but they're not attracting the attention they used to get because they're not winning things. It's Man City that are winning things, or Liverpool are winning Champions Leagues, and it's that money's drifted away, but it'll come back because it's Man United. They are, despite the fact they've been very, very poor for the last 10 years on the pitch, they're still one of the biggest draws in the world. I see it all the time when you look at TV figures and viewing figures. Man United are the top all the time, and it's Man United, it's Liverpool, and there's a massive, massive drop off to the next teams, which are like Arsenal and Chelsea and Tottenham. So United have still got that pull, but they have to keep winning. They have to start winning again to make sure that remains. But they are an attractive proposition to people that want to invest into football. So I don't think the ground is an issue. I think that'll take care of itself. Like I say, the team is the issue because money won't solve the problem. It's also expertise. It's expertise in terms of the staff off the pitch, but it's also, do they back Ten Hag? Do they not back Ten Hag? Who signs the players? Who identifies the players? There have been a lot of mistakes really in the last 2 or 3 years of recruitment, or last 10 years, but certainly the last 2 or 3 years, we talk about identifying a player's talent, but or the off the field credentials and whether they've got the right mindset for it. There's a couple of players in the squad right now we could talk about that haven't really cut it, and you think, well, they should have been signed in the first place. But that's why getting the expertise in is key, because you can't keep making mistakes on players, because that's where the money goes. It goes down the drain.
Absolutely, I'm completely with you on that. Liam Anthony says the old Snapdragon, Man United are screwed in their super chat. And Liam says, Beth, would you build a new stadium or renovate it? To be honest, my personal opinion is I don't mind either one. I'm not too fussed. I know a lot of people don't want to see a new stadium because they've got so much connection to Old Trafford. I feel that. But at the same time, I know how amazing a new stadium could be. And as long as it's a stadium that is the best of the best, that is going to take us forward, I'm up for that personally.
Just on that, me and a couple of lads, when United played in Kazakhstan maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we bumped into Ed Woodward in the team hotel. And,
no, he was happy to see you.
Well, he always was. That was the thing with Eddie. It's almost like he never had any shame. He was always happy to talk to you. So we'd have a chat, and we mentioned the ground, and this was like, say, 2019, I think it was. And I said that I think that the best thing to do would be to knock this Old Trafford down and build a new stadium on the footprint. And he was like, you can't do that. No. Ruled it out completely, saying it's Old Trafford, the fans wouldn't stand for it. No, I don't know. I think a lot of the fans would actually, especially now, having seen what's happened at Tottenham, they would accept the fact that if you stay at Old Trafford, that there's lots of ground out, or land outside the ground. If you said to the fans now, we will build a new stadium there, the car park, and while we're building that stadium, we'll play at Old Trafford, and then in 3 or 4 years' time, you've got an amazing state-of-the-art stadium. I think they'd take it. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But Old Trafford in its current form is outdated. It's going to be very hard to rebuild it. So.
And it's a very small, tight space as well, like you said. It's not as if you've got much space to move things around. There's amazing architects that can come in and do a lot of stuff. Obviously, it's not my expertise anyway, but it'll be interesting to see what direction we do go down and how the fans will respond to that. I know it's quite 50-50 from our community on the United stand. It feels like it's quite 50-50 on that. And MJR says, surely if the debt ends up at 1.5 bill, someone will step in. We'll just have to see how things move forward.
The only issue with that is that if, the only time somebody will step in is if the club can't pay the wages. Beyond that, it's just people always say, debt is tax-free or whatever. It's a business tax break. And I don't understand that side of it, but businesses do run at a debt because it helps them in certain aspects of it. So it's not from a football perspective a good idea, but I don't think anyone would step in unless the debt was coming to the point where they couldn't pay the wages or couldn't pay the creditors. But there's nowhere near that.
MPB says, member for 18 months, might be overly sentimental, but I would be heartbroken to see Old Trafford torn down, even if it's for a shiny new stadium. A lot of people talking about how the Bernabeu has been renovated and looks amazing. There's different routes you can go down, but we'll have to see which direction they go. I'm not too fussed either way, as long as it is a top quality stadium, because that's what we can't carry on with the way it is right now. It is embarrassing that we're not going to move into the Euros, whether it's because it's under renovation or not. Let's be honest, it wouldn't be one of the first choices. It's not one of the best stadiums in England, never mind even the world, and with one of the biggest clubs, if not the biggest club in the world.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's doing it now, and I think, if Barcelona are spending a year or two outside of the new camp and playing at the Olympic Stadium in Barcelona, they're doing it. Madrid have done it like the guys are saying. It may be the case where United have to, let's say, start again, knock Old Trafford down and rebuild in the same plot. They might have to play at Wembley for 2 years. And people say, you can't do that because it's so far. But there's nowhere around here where they could play. You couldn't play at City or Anfield. That's just not going to happen, is it? No. So it might be a case of hire Wembley for a couple of years, like Tottenham did. And the club would have to subsidise travel, a tenner on a coach or something like that. And I don't think the fans should really care about people saying, Man United fans come from London, it's just on the doorstep, all that rubbish. But if somebody said to you now, play at Wembley for 2 years and come back in 2 years' time, you've got an amazing world-class stadium, I think they'd take it. But that it can't stay as it is. It can't remain like that because it's becoming as outdated as Goodison Park, and that sounds ridiculous. But and even they're leaving.
Goodison is. I actually went to the university in Liverpool. Been to Goodison. It is awful.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. And look at this. I mean, the stadium that's being built is unbelievable, and that is going to be used in future things going forward. But it'll be interesting to see. We talked about the footballing side of things being a priority, and I'm absolutely with you on that. And one thing that has been coming out is a lot of talk about Sir Jim Ratcliffe already potentially having Paul Mitchell lined up or Michael Edwards to come in as a director of football. I mean, Paul Mitchell looks like the favourite right now. I mean, started his career at MK Dons, went on to Southampton, Sadio Mane, Tadic, then moved on to Spurs where he had really good success. Heung-min Son, Alderweireld, Kieran Trippier, Dele Alli, and then obviously went on to the RB Red Bull group, but mainly kind of worked with Leipzig and actually Ralph Rangnick as well, who's had a past at Man United, and Kunku, Cunha, who's now doing very well, and then moved on to Monaco. He's had quite a successful career. Do you think that's a big thing that will make a difference straight away? And is this something that can change things, like you said, because the recruitment has been lacking?
Yeah, I don't think it'll make a difference right away. I think those sorts of changes take time. When they happen to bed in, they take time to bed in. They take time for people with different ideas to get their ideas across. So, you know, the Paul Mitchell thing has been doing the rounds for quite a long time now. I don't really see Michael Edwards being a goer. I think Michael Edwards has gone beyond that sporting director role now. I think he's more likely to be involved in actually buying a club somewhere rather than, you know, being a sporting director. But I do think that it's clear that there are deficiencies above the team, between the team and the owners. And I think, you know, Richard Arnold was appointed as replacement of Edward as chief exec because he actually knew the club and knew the owners. They didn't actually go outside and look for the best person to do the job. They brought in the guy that was Ed's number 2, and Ed was appointed because he was in the club. It doesn't strike me as being attracting the very best in class, which is what, you know, Man City do. I think that's the change that will happen with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He will make sure that whoever's in position is the best available, no matter where they come from, whether they come from Manchester, from Liverpool, Barcelona, wherever. They will find the best people, and the days of just hiring people because it was the easy thing to do will be gone. But that change doesn't happen quickly. That takes time. But I think that obviously that will be the change that they will look to input.
It's one of them because Paul Mitchell actually isn't in a job right now. He did leave Monaco, so he would be available to come straight into a job. Do you think if things get moving, this could be something that happens very quickly? But
if Paul Mitchell's as good as people say, why is he out of a job, and why is he got a checkered period of clubs? He's not worked at the biggest clubs. So Paul Mitchell's what we've got a very good PR team that are putting his name forward quite a lot. But if Paul Mitchell was as good as he is, one, he'd be in a job, and 2, his career wouldn't have been spent at, you know, mid-ranking clubs. It's not Man United, and that's the difference. You know, Monaco is not Man United, Leipzig isn't Man United. So I think just let's look at his record. And MK Dons at Man United. You know, Dele Alli was, you know, once in a lifetime signing at MK Dons. So let's just wait and see on that one.
Do you know what I actually quite like about what you've just said is I do think people are getting. It's what the fan base does a lot of time. We are in a position now where there is so many different opinions, but a lot of people are immediately just hyping up whatever they can. As in Paul Mitchell is getting that hype because he has signed some good players. That you can't deny the fact when he was at Tottenham, them signings were very good signings. But like you said, it's not the answer. Well, we don't know because it might be, but I don't think you can single out and be that is the answer to Man United's prayers. That is exactly what's going to help us. There's multiple different factors in this. Yeah,
I mean, look, the academy's not good enough at the moment. You know, there's an injury crisis at the back right now, but where's the academy right back or left backs coming to fill it? Why are they playing Amrabat at left back? So there's so many areas of the club that need to improve, and this is why it'll take time. But I was around when Man City started the changes under Sheikh Mansour, and it was all about money initially, but they brought in the right people. You know, they brought in people like Chiqui Beguistain, they brought in a Ferran Soriano, they brought in lots of people around that level, and that's what made the difference, expertise. And United haven't done that. United have just appointed, 6 out of 10 people in too many positions, and that's why they're a 6 out of 10 club now, because they haven't looked from outside the club and brought the best people in, because the Glazers don't want to be challenged by somebody who will say, no, you need to spend on this rather than that. And I think people that they have brought in are more happy to, toe the party line.
I mean, John Murtough came from Everton, didn't he? If I remember correctly.
Well, John Murtough was brought in by David Moyes, so John's been here for 10 years now in different roles, so he was appointed to his role by Ed Woodward for I don't know what reason for, because we kept being told that he wanted a director of football, a football director, sporting director. Now, Ed handed him the job. Whether John was cut out for it, I don't know. But it's a difficult one with John Murtough, because obviously prior to coming to United, he worked at Fulham, he worked at the Premier League, he worked at Everton, so he's got the credentials in the game. But has he been able to do the job he wants to do, or have his hands been tied by the situation the club is in? These are the things we don't know. I don't think we can find out about these people until
they leave and then maybe do an expose interview.
Yeah, until the new owners come in, and well, not new owners, but the new shareholders come in, I guess.
Yeah, minority stakeholders, really.
It must be an absolute nightmare to work for the Glazers, because you just know that, I mean, other people have told me this, that when you want to make a fast decision with the Glazers, it's never fast, because you have to go through so many layers of bureaucracy to get a decision signed off, and there'll be requirements about fees and, not signing players, but giving new contracts to players because they're cheaper than signing. It's cheaper to give a new deal than sign a new player. Diogo Dalot, 5-year contract last year, that was ridiculous. But it was cheaper to give Dalot a 5-year deal than bring in a proper right-back or left-back that could do his job. So if your ultimate bosses, the owners, are making you do these decisions, then you can't really judge somebody on those decisions, because they're not their decisions. The decisions being enforced upon them by the kind of the strictures that are being laid down. So that's why it's hard to judge people at the club at the moment, because they're having to work to the wrong kind of methods set by the owners.
We'll have to see that if Sir Jim does get the sporting control that he set out to do, what does change, and if anything changed, and what direction it does go in. I mean, I did speak about this a little bit on the show we did earlier, and I just kind of wanted to get your take on it. So Jim Ratcliffe, you spoke about the fact, obviously, he comes from the sporting background of... I think Ineos has some sort of shares in Mercedes. We're talking about in the F1 before, the cycling, Nice. I mean, a lot of people, well, not people, a lot of Nice fans have said they've been a little bit disappointed with Sir Jim, as he came in and said he wanted to challenge for Paris Saint-Germain. I know they're second right now and doing quite well, but since he came in, he was 5th, 9th. Is that a track record good enough, really, to come in and try and turn Manchester United into a team that is winning titles again? I don't know if it is.
No, it's not. But I guess if you look at Nice, you basically Nice are probably comparable to a team, I guess, like probably not even Aston Villa. They're not a traditionally big club in France. We're not talking about Marseille or a Lyon or a Saint Etienne even. We're talking about a club that's never really had any success, trying to compete with the richest club in France by some distance in PSG. So it's different with United, because you come into a club that's got a lot more natural resources, in the sense that the fan base, the history, the ability to commercially, generate funds. So closing the gap to Man City, if you're Man United, should be a lot easier than if you're doing it with Nice. You basically start at the bottom with Nice. And I don't know enough about French football to know whether it's been a success, but they are second right now, so maybe, he actually said in an interview recently they've learned some mistakes at Nice, which they'll hopefully not repeat at Man United. So
at least that's sort of some honesty coming through.
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing for me is that with the Glazers, it's been obvious right from the outset they've never really cared about the team winning. They don't get up every morning thinking they need to win. But Sir Jim Ratcliffe is a Man United fan. He grew up as a Man United fan. So he has the emotional pull, if nothing else. He wants Man United to win. And that on its own is a change from the current owners who, yes, they want them to win, but it doesn't really matter if they do or don't, because ultimately they're still getting the money out of the club. So for Jim Ratcliffe, it's a sporting, investment as well as a financial one. He wants United to win. He's 70 years old, so he's been a massive success of his life. I think now he's at that age where he wants to have a bit of fun, I guess, and just, turn his boyhood club back into the team that they used to be. So that is a much better approach or, objective or project than the Glazers, which is ultimately to make sure that every year they get £80 to £100 million out of the club and to keep growing their investment, which was very small in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, Jermaine Edwards says Ineos has invested interest in Spurs as one of their sponsors. How will this be viewed by all parties involved, or is this just a norm? Liam Anthony says Old Trafford's our home, even if it's leaking. Renovation, I think, is the best option. It's the place where everyone realises or creates their dreams. Just some chats coming in there. Then Victor says if United issue new shares and Jim buys them, then it looks like United raised the 1.4 billion and then that can go into the stadium. I mean, any thoughts on them chats coming through, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, the financial side of it, nobody knows what his plans are. So raising money with different shares, I think it'd be more private equity involvement or banks that are lending the money. The rest of it, you know, it was a blank piece of paper and we're waiting for him to fill it in with the detail, and that's frustrating because a lot of fans want to know. But I don't think he's going to come in and not offer something exciting for the fans, because you need to get, if you're coming into a club and you're going to start taking charge of the football side, you want to get people to follow. You want to have a kind of a plan that people will be excited about and get behind. You don't want a situation like the first home game next week against Copenhagen where fans are protesting. So I'd imagine there'll be something there that will appeal to the fans, but you know, not even in a transfer window yet, it's going to be difficult. And if you get to January, United are still going to be stuck with FFP issues because of the last 2 or 3 years with the ins and outs and the lack of, you know, commercial growth. So he can't come in and spend 100, 200 million pounds in January. Newcastle haven't been able to do that. You know, Newcastle have spent money, but they haven't spent big money because of their financial fair play issues, which United have also got. So that's where it's going to take time. But I'd imagine that with him in charge, they might be able to generate more revenue because the Glazers are diminishing. But, you know, if the fans are still protesting against the Glazers, a lot of companies will be worried about getting involved. So it's a catch-22 really.
I do wonder what will happen with the New York Stock Exchange shareholders as well, because obviously there is a small percentage that are invested into the club through that, and obviously Sir Jim coming in and taking a stake does ask questions. So it'll be interesting to see what direction that goes in as well. But I mean, it's interesting stuff. For me personally, I was always wanted a full takeover of Manchester United and the Glazers to go. But as you said, this could be the start. I just don't know. I just think the ceiling was so much higher under the other option.
A clean break would have been better for everybody. It would have just detoxified everything and just helped the club start again. But that isn't going to happen, you know. And the situation is as it is. And I think if there's a roadmap that's kind of produced, which says 25% now, X amount in a year or two's time, and then to the point where the Glazers just become, you know, so minor in their shareholder that they don't matter. So we'll see what happens, but I do think it is a positive in the sense that it's diminishing the Glazers' grip on the club and it's giving somebody else the chance to run it, which again is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how quickly the process happens, and if Sir Jim gains spot and control straight away. These are questions that all need to be answered, like you said. But I want to kind of move on to a little bit about the footballing side of Manchester United, because there has been a lot of ownership talk and international break. I think Man United did need it. We were on a bad run, and we managed to scrape that win against Brentford. But I mean, if that didn't happen, there would have been serious questions asked in this international break, and there is questions being asked, but I think the pressure would have been absolutely mounting on Erik ten Hag. I mean, on Erik ten Hag, is it possible Sir Jim comes in and maybe sees a different future forward? Maybe he gets behind Erik ten Hag. We don't know where Erik ten Hag's kind of, how safe his place is at Manchester United. I mean, the reports coming out is that Erik ten Hag is not under threat at all, and that his future is secure no matter with what owner that comes in. I mean, is Erik ten Hag, to your knowledge, getting the full backing of Manchester United and the man for the future?
Well, that's the word coming out, but no manager's ever secure. Again, we don't know what people are going to do until they actually do it. Now, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's group would be wise to say that Erik ten Hag is safe in his position, because if they said the opposite,
the fans would go crazy.
Well, some would, some wouldn't after the start of the
season.
season.
I suppose, yeah.
But I don't think you can come into a club saying, right, the manager's got 5 games to save his job. You can't do that. So you have to say certain things whether you mean it or not. And that, again, that is kind of sifting through what people mean and what people actually they say. So Jim Ratcliffe, I think with Ten Hag, he will know that he's got to prove himself again. No matter who the owner, if the ownership issue changes and he's got different bosses, he has to prove himself, because yes, he won a trophy last season, but this season's been terrible, and some of his signings haven't been great. Now, there has been progress on and off the pitch under Ten Hag, and he's changed the mindset, but it has kind of regressed a little bit this year. So it'd be foolish of him to think that his job is completely safe under the new regime, because it shouldn't be. And I think, you know, if he gets to January and this season is carrying on as it is doing, then I think the new owners, or they're not owners, I keep making that mistake, the new regime would have to look at it and think, well, is this the guy the right man for the job? But I think that applies to any manager. So I don't think Erik ten Hag should be given the assurance that he's safe, because he can't be safe. Nobody can be safe.
Well, there's talks about him potentially getting a new contract. Do you think that do you think that would happen, especially kind of the way that we're going at the moment? It would be bold to do that.
That would be a wrong decision, because he's won the Carabao Cup, which was great for the club, but you can't give a guy a new contract because the regime has changed. Like I say, he has to prove it with results, and the results have been very up and down. his recruitment has been up and down. The situation with Sancho is dragging on for too long now. Is that a sign of a good manager that he's allowed this to happen, or is it a bad manager that's allowed it to drag on? So he has to get results. Every manager's judged on results, and as we stand right now, Man United could not take the Champions League at match day 3 next week if they lose against Copenhagen. So that isn't a good place to be if you've got new bosses coming in. So yes, from a public position, they have to say, the managers say if we have no plans to change, but the reality is that you'll be judged on results, and that is the same for every manager.
Talks of Mitchell van der Gaag potentially going for the Ajax job, that had put a big spanner in the works, because a lot of the time a manager is very, very reliant on their assistant manager. Yeah,
well, I think that's been... there's some suggestion that Louis van Gaal would be advising Ajax to go for Mitchell van der Gaag because he's involved now with Ajax again.
Louis van Gaal loves to sabotage us, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So if that happens, then Ten Hag would have to get on with it. I know he tried to bring in Robin van Persie when he got the job, but he wasn't allowed to because of work permit issues. Obviously, now that we've got Brexit, players can't move around as much as they used to on managers. So Van Persie didn't have the credentials at the time to move from Feyenoord to take a job at United, but that may have changed. So if Mitchell van der Gaag does go to Holland, maybe Van Persie's time at Feyenoord has now enabled him to get the points needed. So potentially he could come as a number 2 to Ten Hag, but we're getting ahead of the game here because it's a lot of ifs and buts. But he did try to bring him in initially, didn't do, ended up with Steve McLaren. So managers and assistants move all the time. If Ajax want to make Mitchell van der Gaag their number 1 coach, it'd be foolish to turn it down. It's the top job at a top club, but again, we're kind of jumping ahead a bit because we don't know if that's going to happen yet and what the club would do.
Yeah, we were speaking about it on a show the other day when the news first came out, and as much as you'd want him to stay because obviously Erik ten Hag clearly likes him and they are a partnership, if you're looking to progress your own career, you would absolutely go and take the job as the first team manager at Ajax. Yeah,
and also you can't, if a manager can't do it as assistant, then he's not much of a manager. Look at Pep Guardiola, he's lost Mikel Arteta, he's lost Juanmi Lillo, who's gone again, he's lost another, I think Rodolfo Borrell went to the US. Pep loses his assistant all the time. So Alex did, Brian Kidd moved on, Archie Knox moved on, Steve McLaren moved on, Carlos Queiroz moved on. If an assistant goes, then you have to find a new assistant and get on with it. You can't just say that we're a team and I can't work without him, he's just going to have to deal with it.
I wanted to track back a little bit because I forgot to ask you it before, so we'll just track back and then move forward again. And you spoke a while ago on this show about Sheikh Jassim potentially going for Tottenham Hotspur, and there's been a lot of talk that Sheikh Jassim still might invest into another club in the Premier League. Could you see that happening?
Well, I said that in May, and even this week it's still being dressed up as I said it this week, so I've got to be careful. No, what I was told was that Sheikh Jassim and Qatar obviously want to take an interest in a Premier League club. Now, Man United was the obvious one because Man United was available, up for sale. Now, that hasn't happened, so if you're Sheikh Jassim and you're people in Qatar that want to invest in a Premier League club, of course you're looking around for the best options. Now, which clubs are for sale right now? Liverpool, on and off, but they've said they're not for sale, but they're taking investment. Tottenham, not publicly for sale, but I think the owner, Joe Lewis, or the old owner, I'm not sure what his situation is right now, would cash in. So, Tottenham's a very interesting proposition. He's got a brand new stadium, it's a London club, they're a club that, needs investment, but I'm not saying now, so all the aggregators out there are going to say that I'm saying that they're going to take over at Tottenham, but Tottenham are a club that would obviously be of interest to Qatar because they've got a lot of potential and they've got a stadium that's already built. So, but there'll be other clubs. I mean, but for me, if you're looking for a Premier League club, Tottenham is the obvious one because they've got so many things in place. But who knows?
Yeah, I do think we'll see a situation where they will probably invest in another Premier League club, and I think it's going to be heartbreaking for Man United if they see them be successful, knowing what could have been.
Well, that is a problem for United because, Man City got Abu Dhabi money and they've been top 4 consistently for the last 10 years. Newcastle are getting stronger all the time, so you'd imagine at some point they will become an established top 4 team. If Qatari money comes in and buys Tottenham, for instance, or another club with that potential, then that could be another place in the top 4 that's sewn up at some point very quickly. So then you're looking at, I know there's going to be 5 Champions League spots this year, but if it's 4, you're looking at Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United scrapping out for that final spot because the money from Middle East Wealth Fund is going into these other big clubs. So that's why United has to work out with Sir Jim Ratcliffe because they need the financial expertise and the expertise, sporting expertise to actually make it work. So they will be worrying about Sheikh Jassim going somewhere else, but like I said right from the outset, his offer might have been too good to be true. There might have been a reason why it didn't come off.
It'll be interesting to see. Tony says, do you think the atmosphere will become more toxic, and is that why there are reports about enhanced security? I know there is enhanced security potentially for the next home game against Copenhagen, and I think it's because of the track record, and rightly so, that Man United fans haven't been happy with the fact that the Glazers are still in the football club.
Depends what Jim Ratcliffe says this week. If this is confirmed later this week that he's going to take a 25% stake, he might come out and say we're going to do this, this, and this, and that might appease the fans completely. We don't know. You can't make that call until you know what's been said or how this deal has been explained or sold to the fans. So I do think there'll be protests because obviously the Glazers are still here, but we don't know what is being proposed by Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos. So I think that might change the temperature if he says the right things.
Anthony Murray said, bring back Rangnick for the rebuild. Don't think that'd happen, would it?
No.
I mean, we'll move back on to what I was talking about, the footballing side of things. And, I mean, since we last spoke, quite a lot has happened off the pitch. I mean, Jadon Sancho, like you just pointed out there, has been basically exiled from the squad and he wants to leave in January. I think Ten Hag wants him to leave as well. They're in a situation where it's just not good for either party. I don't get a club that would really want to go for him because of the issues that he's had off the pitch. I understand he's a very talented player that's probably going to be available at a cut price, but do you think that's what you'd expect to happen in January for Sancho to move on?
I mean, like I say, who's going to take him? Because he's proven a problem to United off the pitch, and he wasn't really doing it on the pitch. So if you're a club that wants to bring a player in, you're looking at Jadon Sancho thinking, what is the positive outcome of this? Well, the positive outcome is not on his wages or his fee, because that's going to be quite high. Is it a positive in terms of his playing ability? Well, he hasn't done it for 2 years now. He hasn't done it in the Premier League. Maybe he's not a Premier League player. Maybe he's not cut out for the Premier League. So I don't see a winner in that situation. But for me, you know, whoever's advising Jadon Sancho, I mean, they're having a shocker, because he's either taking bad advice or he's not listening to good advice. But whichever one it is, they're not doing much good for him. Because this thing at Arsenal was it 5, 6 weeks ago now? And there's been no sense of a kind of approachment. So Sancho's basically killing his career. He's not doing anything at the moment apart from training with the kids. That is not good for Jadon Sancho. There's no winner on his part. But from United's point of view, you know, Erik Ten Hag, you know, I think was right to say he wasn't training well enough last week. Sancho's reaction was ridiculous, and it was childish, you know, to react like that.
Completely agree.
But they're in a situation now where if you're the club, you've got a player that costs you £70 million. That is an investment that the club is just seeing going down the drain. So grown-ups now should say to Ten Hag and to Sancho, you've got to sort this out, because it's not helping Ten Hag because he's not got a right winger. It's not helping Sancho because his career is just on hold. And it's not helping the club in the sense that nobody's going to take him because he's not playing. So if they do get rid of him, it's going to be a massive loss. So, I mean, I covered the Carlos Tevez situation at Man City when he refused to play at Bayern Munich, and that was worse than this. It was because he disappeared to Argentina and was never coming back. But the grown-ups in the room said to Mancini and to Tevez and to Tevez people, you've got to sort this out because nobody's winning here. And they sorted it out, and he came back and he played in the run and they won the title. So things can change, but I think Jadon Sancho needs to sit down and think, you know, I'm wasting my career here. I'm just totally wasting my career. He's lost his England place, lost his Man United place. And, you know, if he sits down and thinks, where's he going to go? Does he really want to go to Saudi Arabia? Is he 21, 22, 23? I mean, just look at where you are. You look at Man United, you can still turn it round. You can still salvage your career at this great club. So just find a way to come together. So, but I think Ten Hag and Sancho need to be put in a room and say, whether it's Richard Arnold, John Merton, say, look, this is ridiculous now, you've got to sort it out. You're both grown men.
350 grand a week as well. Like, who's going to want to pay that? No one.
Well, and that is part of the problem. You know, United reaping what they sow in terms of overpaying players. So Jadon Sancho doesn't have to do anything because he's on that sort of money. He can sit out in his contract and never work again. But surely his personal ambition and pride would make him think that I've got to kind of do something here.
There was talks potentially that Sancho was maybe waiting to see if Ten Hag got sacked.
Maybe, but a new manager might come and think he's just as much of a pain as Ten Hag did. So you can't live your life like that. You can't. I don't think Ten Hag is anywhere close to that situation. Even though they've had a bad start to the season, I just don't think that's even on the agenda. You know, results always dictate a manager's future, but I don't think if Jadon Sancho's waiting for that to happen, then you know he's probably going to get his testimonial by the time he gets his wish. So I just think, like I said, they just need to get in a room and sort it out because nobody wins. It's not helping any of them. It's just stubbornness on both sides. Yeah,
I agree with you on that, and I think for Sancho especially, as a professional football player, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to be playing in the Champions League, which you could have been doing, and proving yourself in front of the Stretford End. I can't get my head around it, but I mean, especially considering the situation when it all happened was when Anthony was out of the team and he had a real shot to kind of solidify that right wing position, but apparently he prefers the left, so we're not sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you quickly before I move on to something else, do you think this situation could be affecting Rashford, whose form has massively dipped and obviously is very close to Sancho?
It shouldn't do, really. I mean, if that's affecting Marcus Rashford's form, that's not ideal that he's upset 'cause his mate's not playing. That doesn't bode well at all. And I just think Marcus Rashford is a player that blows hot and cold, and he always has done. You know, he had a great 3 months last year, but prior to that he was pretty poor. And then the goals dried up around about February, March time, and after that he didn't score many goals, and he's not had a good time this year. So I think Marcus Rashford is not a player that you can hang your hat on and say that he's gonna deliver for us. I think he's a player that would be a useful addition in a good team, a top team, but I don't think he's equipped to carry a team. And he just had a good run last year, and I think he got a contract on the back of it, and I think, again, United might pay the price for that in the sense that he's not delivering right now. So, you know, maybe Rashford needs better players around him, but he's 26 later this month. 26. I mean, he feels like a young player, but he's halfway through his career, and it's like he seems to be flatlining, and I think that isn't a good thing. But also, in Marcus's defence, I don't think he's been coached as well as he should have been over the last few years at the club. I don't think he's been kicked on by, you know, Mourinho and certainly Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and even Ten Hag. You know, I don't see Ten Hag improving many players, and Rashford for me hasn't improved.
Rashford improved under Ten Hag in his first season, but like you said, we had always had this thing with Rashford where it'll be up, down, up, down, and for at the top level you need to be consistent.
Well, I think what I'm saying in terms of his improvement, his awareness is terrible. You know, so if he's in a position where he can find a pass or he can shoot, more often than not he'll shoot where he doesn't spot the pass. Now, if you're an elite coach, you point that out and you address it, and you look at, I don't keep referring to Pep Guardiola because it's the wrong side of the town, but he sorted Raheem Sterling out big time in that aspect at City. He's done it with Jack Grealish. Awareness is key, right? You put your head up and you look for the pass. Rashford doesn't do that. And I think the worse his confidence gets, the less he does it, the more he kind of shoots from 20 yards. He takes on impossible shots to try and, you know, break his duck. But if you're a top coach like Ten Hag is supposed to be, you take him on the side and say, look, just calm down, stop doing that, find the pass. And that's what I mean about Rashford not being coached to where he should be. He's got all the, you know, the attributes. He's got great pace. He's got great finishing ability in certain aspects, and he has got good awareness. But it's not being put in the right. He's not putting it all together. And a top coach or the coach's assistant should be doing that. So Marcus has been let down a bit by that. But equally, he's an experienced player now, so he should be finding a way through it quicker than he's doing.
Decision making is so crucial, and that's something that's always been lacking with Rashford, like you said. There was a lot of talk about the club restructuring the medical department and also the scouting department. Do you think this is maybe the step in the direction that needs to be taken, especially considering, you know, Sir Jim's coming in with the sporting decision, and how poor United have been in the medical department and in the scouting department over the past 10 years?
The amount of times I've heard that over the years, going back to Alex Ferguson's time, we're getting in a new medical staff.
Just regurging.
It's the same old story going round and round again. Groundhog Day, you know, Edward had brought in 50 odd different scouts, and we had this thing about, you know, we signed Wan-Bissaka because we had 8 and 4 right backs. All these
That's absolutely crazy to me still now.
Exactly, but this is the problem, that they keep reinventing the wheel, and it never seems to work. So hopefully the next time it happens under Sir Jim Ratcliffe it does work. But you know, no, it's been going on since Alex Ferguson's days about, you know, needing to bring in new medical team and unveiling certain. I remember they unveiled a scanner at Carrington once since Alex Ferguson was here that was going to end all the problems with the injuries, and it never did. So that's just a rehash of the usual kind of panic move every 12 months. Let's say we're going to change the medical staff or change the scouting team.
Especially in the international break.
Yeah, absolutely.
When that story comes out. But I wanted to ask you nextly, before we wrap up, is one for Ten Hag was a centre-back that he didn't get in summer, and it was a position that he clearly wanted. There was links for us, Kim Min-jae, Pavard, Todibo. I mean, Todibo is actually at Nice, young centre-back. Do you think that's someone that maybe Man United could push to go for? I mean, a lot of reports about United potentially looking at different centre-backs.
Yeah, well, they need to get centre-backs out. That's the problem, isn't it? And I think, you know, if Harry Maguire had left, they might have been able to bring one in. But, you know, as it stands right now, you've got Varane, you've got Martinez, you've got Maguire, you've got Lindelof, you've got Johnny Evans. So you've got 5. So, you know, it's not good management to have 6 on your books. So you're going to have to move some out. Now, are they going to do that in January? I don't know. I mean, will Maguire go in January? Probably not, because the fee involved in. You know, I think that's another element where Ten Hag has kind of had a bit of a problem there, because
Euros maybe might push him to do it.
Potentially, but I think possibly. But I think the wages and the fee would be an issue. But I think that, you know, again, is Ten Hag been a bit too stubborn with Maguire? I'm not Maguire's biggest fan. I don't think he's kind of Man United level, but I think recently we've had a situation, we've had Amrabat at left back, you've had Dalot at right back. Now surely you can play Lindelof at right back, you play Dalot at left back, you put Maguire in centre half, so you've got defenders in defensive positions. Then Amrabat can play in his midfield position. Why are you putting midfield at left back? And so I think sometimes Ten Hag doesn't help himself, but obviously doesn't trust certain personnel. But I do think they need better. They need better everywhere, but they need better centre halves. And because you look at Varane, I saw the way that Varane was beaten by Icardi when Galatasaray scored that winning goal. You know, Varane can't run. He can read the game, but he can't run, and you need a centre half who can run. And I don't think you've got anybody at the back who's athletic enough to do that.
I think the issue, obviously, with Varane is I think he's a very good centre back, but it's the injuries as well. It's so unsettling to the back four when you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out.
Yeah, well, Real Madrid or big clubs don't tend to let players go to rival big clubs unless there's something wrong, or unless if they've got their money's worth out of them, they move them on. So, but United over the years have brought a lot of players from big clubs that have been disasters. You know, Schweinsteiger from Bayern Munich. You know, you've got Casemiro who's looking to show his age right now, and he's getting lots, you know, suspensions and what have you. Varane, injuries. Real Madrid don't let players go unless they've had their use of them. So, I think United have got to learn again down the line that they've got to stop doing that.
There was actually, to finish up on, talking about Casemiro, there was a report a while ago that United this summer are already looking for next summer as a long-term Casemiro replacement already, and maybe, I mean, I know his contract's like 5 years, maybe the Saudi League might be an option. I think Casemiro was a great signing last year, but this season he's looking very, very poor. I mean, Kobe Mainoo was touted to kind of maybe come in and do that role. Is that something United are looking at long-term?
Well, Kobe Mainoo is one of these players that's probably got a good future, but again, it's this little kind of clever PR ploy by the club to back a young player. Oh, well, we bring all these young players, but he's not ready. But Casemiro equally is, you know, he's in his 30s, and the club is never going to get full value from Casemiro in the sense of his contract. So, from a United perspective, if Saudi Arabia come in for Varane and Casemiro, it'll be fantastic news because they'll get big money for players on big wages and big fees. But maybe that's a fanciful notion, but they've got to get away from signing old players from Real Madrid because they don't get the full value out of them.
It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens now. Mainoo is back fit from injury. We've got players coming back in. Reguilon, obviously left back, coming back in. To finish up the show, Mark, it's been a great one. What do you expect from Man United for the rest of the season? I always ask you these sort of questions at the end, but what do you expect from them? Do you think they will go out the Champions League group stage? Do you think they will end up getting top four? Or do you think that's sort of already starting to get written off now?
I think Champions League group stage is looking pretty grim because they're going to have to win the next 3 games, and that'll take up 9 points. They have to. So if they don't win the next 3 games, then they've got Bayern Munich at home in the last game. So even if Bayern are through, they'll want to knock Man United out. So I just think it's looking really tough because even if they win the next home game and they win in Copenhagen, which would be tough, they've got to win in Istanbul against Galatasaray, who will need to win to go through. So I just don't think this team is mentally strong enough to go there. I just don't see, and we've seen United in the Premier League in the last few months, away from home, they're terrible. So you're basically asking United to win 2 away games in the Champions League to get through. So I think the group stage is looking unlikely. But then, you know, maybe getting into the Europa League, if they're looking to finish 3rd, is a better way to progress the second half of the season and go to the Champions League, because I think last 16 they're not going to get beyond.
Don't tell me that.
They're not going to get beyond the last 16 of the Champions League. I just don't see how they do. So I think the Champions League group stage is looking like a bit of an uphill struggle right now. Champions League, well, they can finish 5th because of the way that this new system's. So if they finish 5th, they'll get in the Champions League next year. So that is going to be tough. But I think they've got a chance. But it's going to be tough because, you know, they're already a long way away. But they've got quality in the squad. It just, I don't know. I think it's going to be unlikely because they've had such a bad start, and I've not seen any situation yet where they've played well. They haven't won any game convincingly apart from the Carabao Cup tie. So even the Premier League games they've won, they've all been kind of, you know, by the seat of the pants. So they need to start winning games and winning games well. So I think top 5 is going to be a struggle.
I've got to agree. I'm very, very worried about this season, I'm going to be honest. But I mean, getting knocked out of the Champions League, which could potentially happen next Tuesday, would be absolutely ridiculous.
I think they'll win next week. I think what United will do is they'll kind of, what they always do, they'll give out some false hope that
and
you
then
might back into it,
away,
and then, you know, 2 tough away games, unlikely.
It is, especially that Galatasaray one away. But Mark, look, thank you so much for coming on and doing this interview for us. I know you're very busy and you've got a call to do, so we'll wrap up here. But thank you for coming on, and everybody as well. Make sure you go and follow Mark Ogden, ESPN. Some really good articles there and a great conversation today. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for all the super chats and chats in the chat as well. Make sure you hit a like on the video if you like these in-studio interviews, and have a lovely rest of your day. Mark will be back with the 8 p.m. show later, and we'll see you then. Bye, everybody.